During 1981's All-Star Party for Burt Reynolds, Reynolds surprised the audience by asking his ex, Dinah Shore, to sing a number. Shore was shocked and completely unprepared, and the song she chose was like a knife to the heart. We'll get more into that later. Dinah Shore dazzled the country with music hits and an impressive TV career, but behind all the glitz and glamour, Shore hid the details of a turbulent life. Born Frances Fanny Rose Shore in 1916, she faced a huge life challenge before she even turned 2 years old. At just 18 months, doctors diagnosed her with polio. The disease left her completely unable to move and sentenced her to a life of painful bed rest. Luckily for her, her mother did not take the doctor's word for it. Rather than leave her child to an unfulfilled life without movement, her mother took it upon herself to see to her rehabilitation. She engaged Shore's affected limbs with massage and exercise, eventually bringing her close to full recovery. The disease left her with a lifelong limp, but sadly, this wasn't her only childhood struggle. Shore struggled to blend in when she was growing up because she looked much different than other girls in her Tennessee neighborhood. Born to Jewish parents, she often felt her culture made her stand out in the wrong way. That is, until she figured out that standing out might just be the best thing that she could ever do. At a young age, Shore recognized that she loved to sing, and thankfully her parents fostered her love for it, with her father even letting her host mini concerts for customers at the store that he owned. At this point, her polio had healed, and things really seemed to be shaping up for her. But sadly, to her total surprise, she had yet another tragedy coming for her. While she was still in her teens, Shore lost her mother to a heart attack. The loss likely affected her deeply, especially since it happened at such a young age. Somehow though, she managed to go on and find the strength to pursue her dreams. During her college summers, Shore took off to New York City to try her luck as a singer. She did land a few gigs and would often sing the same song at all the auditions, a song which was simply called Dinah. At one of these auditions, she just so happened to meet a DJ who could not remember her name. So instead he called her Dinah Girl, and eventually the name stuck, giving her the perfect stage name for her new persona. But she still had a really hard time breaking into the music industry. Once she graduated and moved to New York City full-time, Shore actually failed a lot of major auditions. In the thick of the big band era of American music, joining a band seemed like an obvious first choice. Unfortunately, she just could not impress them enough to land a spot. She then decided to take things in a totally different direction. Shore made the brave choice to go solo, which was a huge risk. Back then, very few solo artists actually saw much success. She started small and eventually landed a gig on the radio in 1939. Audiences quickly fell in love with her voice, and she rose faster than many thought a solo artist could. Over the next few years, Shore continued to sing on the radio, which soon led to a recording deal. She made several hit singles, with her music topping charts at each turn. But it wasn't just the music. People loved her bubbly nature and welcoming personality. Before long, she caught the attention of a man that she couldn't deny. Just as her career started to take off, she met actor George Montgomery. At first, it really seemed like a whirlwind Hollywood romance. Reportedly, he fell in love with the same Shore her fans adored, and she fell right along with him. The two of them got married in 1943 and brought 2 children into the family, including 1 adopted child. And as far as Hollywood families went, theirs seemed picture perfect. But beneath the surface, a hidden darkness was starting to show. While they were married, Shore's star continued to rise. She crossed over from music into film, and eventually into television as well. For nearly 2 decades, it seemed like everything she touched turned to gold in the entertainment industry, with her hits doing record numbers. But behind the scenes, Shore's home life slowly but surely began to fall apart. Some reports indicate that Montgomery started to get jealous man syndrome, taking issue with his wife's work. The thing is, he was still working as an actor, but his success didn't hold a candle to that of his wife's, which meant that he was pretty much known as Dinah Shore's husband, and eventually it all became too much for him. To make matters worse, rumors of infidelity started to swirl around the couple. In 1961, Montgomery traveled abroad to film the movie Samar, with the notably gorgeous Ziva Rodan as leading lady. He most likely traveled to work throughout the marriage several times, but this time, the news coming back to Shore completely broke her heart. And the press was relentless, as reports of a torrid affair taking place between Montgomery and his co-star littered the tabloids. People close to Shore said the news broke her, as her husband also neglected to keep contact with her during his trip. Even worse, it was also not the first time that he had allegedly cheated on her. Reports allege Montgomery also involved himself with another Hollywood beauty, Diana McBain. These affairs supposedly pressed on Shore's greatest insecurities, because she just didn't see herself as anywhere near as beautiful as these movie stars. But don't feel too bad for her yet, because Shore apparently got caught up in some entanglements of her own. Although she's never confirmed it, some reports claim that she engaged in a long-time affair with another famous singer, Frank Sinatra. They allegedly did so in the 1950s, halfway into her marriage. At least one memoir on Sinatra affirms this, and with the way of Hollywood, it's not hard to imagine that Montgomery heard about it too. Either way, the end of their marriage seemed imminent. When they finally divorced in 1962, Montgomery and Shore came out with their own explanation. They insisted their demanding jobs just made them grow apart. This is definitely possible as it is that they made up that story to hide something more salacious. Unfortunately for Shore, her marriage didn't end up being all she lost that year. Among all the stress of the end of her marriage, Capitol Records dropped her from their label. To be fair, her success in the music industry had started to wane over time, but it still must have been an unexpected blow to her career. Although you might say this was her rock bottom, it was just the stepping stone she needed to disappear from Hollywood for a while and refocus on herself. Not long after finalizing her divorce in 1962, it seemed like she found love again. Shore married a tennis player named Maurice F. Smith less than a year after leaving Montgomery. Now, there is such a thing as quick romance, but to go from a divorce to a second marriage in about a year definitely seems a bit drastic. Shore probably came to regret the speed with which she married Smith, judging by the things she claimed about him later on. For one thing, she reported that her new husband could be very controlling, so much so that she couldn't make an independent decision. Worse than that, she claimed that he severely mistreated her. Thankfully, our girl didn't put up with it for too long. Less than a year after the wedding, she divorced her second husband. At this point, she might have sworn off all men, because for the next few years, Shore focused her attention on her children and nothing else. It was only in 1970, with her children much more grown up, that she finally felt ready to return to entertainment full time. And when she did, she came back with a vengeance. Shore returned to television screens and bounced back into popularity by starring in her own variety show, Dinah's Place. The audiences loved her and her unique interactions with celebrities. Rather than hosting sit-down interviews, she encouraged her guests to teach her and the audience their hidden skills. Once again, her star rose with no sign of stopping. Then came the one episode that changed her life forever. In 1970, Shore welcomed actor Burt Reynolds to an episode on her show. Though still technically at the beginning of his career, Reynolds already boasted several successful television and film roles. More than that though, he held a strong spot amongst Hollywood's hottest male heartthrobs. But one look at Shore totally decimated him. His instant attraction to her probably shocked him. After all, not many 34-year-old men gloated about attractions to women in their 50s. But as Reynolds continued to claim for years following their first encounter, he wanted Shore from the very first time they met. Not only that, but he arrived at her show ready to put his money where his mouth was. Reynolds just couldn't leave the set without trying for a chance with her. This man pulled out all the stops. He asked her out, not just on a regular dinner date either. He invited her to come with him to Palm Springs to take some time to get to know each other better. That grand invitation might have easily swayed a younger actress, but Shore was not impressed. It's possible that she thought he was too young for her. She might have been flattered, but decided it wasn't a good idea for whatever reason, so she politely turned him down. But shortly after their first meeting, they bumped into each other again. This time, neither of them could deny the chemistry between them. Shore finally agreed to go out with Reynolds, and found herself falling for him at an alarming rate. It sounds like some type of age gap fairy tale romance. But one little detail almost ruined the whole thing. An actress living in his home at the time. Allegedly, Reynolds started dating Miko Miyama, a Japanese actress, sometime before he met Shore. Reports even go so far as to claim that Miyama felt Reynolds planned to propose to her, so it was pretty serious. But now that he was head over heels for Shore, he needed to make Miyama disappear, and fast, which is just what he did. Apparently, he paid her off to leave his home and their relationship without making a scene. She left peacefully enough, which makes sense considering the convertible and weekly payment that he supposedly promised to give her. With the ex now out of the way, Reynolds turned his full attention to the woman of his dreams. Shore and Reynolds spent the next few years together in a relationship that ultimately became a Hollywood legend. They just made sense together and enjoyed each other's company. Shore called their time comfortable and ordinary, and after her past, it's not hard to understand the appeal, even as the age difference began to show. Compatibility aside, Shore's maturity still contrasted with Reynolds' youth. She catered to him when she needed to, even letting him beat her at tennis. When it came to their careers though, she probably feared a situation like her first marriage, as Reynolds didn't have nearly as many accolades as she did yet. But he proved her wrong. Not only was he not bitter, but he also praised her accomplishments and looked to her for advice about his own career. While he said he didn't necessarily always agree with her, he admitted suggestions on his career always proved correct over time. So it truly sounded like a match made in heaven. The only downside? The world was determined to tear them apart. Many people hated their relationship, and the press taunted them mercilessly. Tabloids loved to place the two of them on covers, calling Shore a cougar and finding all kinds of ways to disparage their union. It was all extremely cruel, and likely would have never happened if Reynolds was the older one. The couple mostly managed to ignore the gossip, but in the end, the difference in their ages caused the end of their relationship. The sad part is that Reynolds was utterly devoted to Shore and wanted to marry her, hoping to even start a family. Unfortunately though, she refused to marry him, knowing she couldn't bear any children at her age. Reynolds felt that problem could be easily solved with adoption, but Shore didn't find that to be the only thing holding them back. She also worried about the experience of aging while she was with him. In her own words, she just didn't want to grow old in his arms. She worried about getting visually older, and probably worried that Reynolds would feel less attraction to her as she wrinkled. Tragically, these seemingly minor differences eventually brought their romance to a sad end. Reynolds was the one who ultimately broke up with Shore. He couldn't get past her unwillingness to marry him and adopt a child, and she refused to bend an inch on her decision. The two went their own ways amicably, and he continued to date and eventually got married. But their story wasn't over yet. In 1981, 6 years after the couple had called it quits, Shore and Reynolds had quite an awkward reunion on the television special All-Star Party for Burt Reynolds. The actor surprised the audience by asking his best friend to sing a number. The look on Shore's face when her ex-partner announced her name was unforgettable. Considering the flabbergasted expression, she clearly had not expected to be called out by Reynolds. Still, she nervously joined him in front of the cameras and sang a heart-wrenching rendition of The Glory of Love while embracing him. The mutual affection still lingered, and according to Reynolds, he never truly got over it. In fact, he claimed to the end that even though he married someone else, Shore stood as the love of his life. She always spoke very fondly of their relationship as well. More interestingly though, it started quite the spicy trend for her. Reynolds didn't end up being the only younger man that Shore dated. Maybe word got around that age didn't hold her back at all. and she reportedly went on to date many other famous younger men. Her roster allegedly included actor Ron Ellie, singer Andy Williams, and actor Wayne Rogers, and her career shifted a whole lot over time too. Throughout the 70s, she continued to dazzle on screen while managing to keep it mostly separate from her love life. Audiences adored her and the trademark kiss that she blew to sign off with at the end of her show. Her performances even won her several Emmys, though one surprising blow followed a particularly notorious Emmy win. In the same telegram NBC sent to her congratulating her for her win, they notified her of the show's immediate cancellation, claiming they needed the slot for game shows. This must have been a cruel blow. Thankfully though, it didn't mean the end of Dinah Shore. She came back swinging with the show Dinah shortly after. Even though it marked a bit of a restart, she managed to bring in excellent numbers, competing with seasoned talk show hosts like Merv Griffin. Her show ran for several more years and boasted several notable guests, including one famous guest who made a point of speaking to her first. Shore lived through several notable moments in American history, including the controversial presidency of Ronald Reagan. When the Reagans left the White House in 1989, multiple reporters likely vied for the chance to speak to them, but it was Shore who landed the very first interview with the First Lady, which just goes to show you how respected she actually was. And besides that, entertainment wasn't the only place where she shined. While she enjoyed playing tennis, she also excelled in a sport that women didn't involve themselves too much with in her time: golf. It started with a request for her to host a tournament, and ended up cemented in sport history. After hosting that tournament in 1971 in Beverly Hills, California, Shore became an avid player of the sport, using her influence to encourage other women to play as well. Her influence did so much that the country club named the tournament after her. This is even more impressive when you realize that she shouldn't have been allowed there in the first place. Even before the tournament, she became the very first woman granted membership at the Hillcrest Country Club. Her wealth and popularity likely played a huge role in this move, but she still didn't take it for granted. She made a point of encouraging other women athletes and members to be permitted at the club. And as she grew older, Shore found even more ways to be great. She gave money to multiple causes, including charities for cancer research and children's health. She also established the Dinah Shore Foundation, which continues to serve charities. With her personality, talent, and heart for others, Shore continued to amass accolades to the very end. Though Shore left her Tennessee hometown for California in her youth, she always maintained her southern charm and personality. Because of that, they named a street in her honor Dinah Shore Boulevard. She also won several spots of honor, including a star on the Palm Springs Walk of Stars and a spot in the Television Hall of Fame. Shore contributed to America's entertainment for over 40 years. She was the perfect transitional figure for women in changing times. She was independent, intelligent, self-confident, and accomplished, while at the same time, she projected an image of warmth and femininity. She matured nicely on television, which proved to older women that aging was not a curse or a disease. By 1980, at the age of 65, Shore decided to go off the air and take it a little easier. It was only a few years later that she still decided that she had one more show left in her, and that show was A Conversation with Dinah, which ran on the cable network TNN from 1989 until 1992. The half-hour series consisted of one-on-one interviews with the likes of Reynolds, Sinatra, Hope, and former First Lady Nancy Reagan. In 1993, doctors diagnosed Shore with ovarian cancer. She sadly succumbed to the disease the very next year, just days before her 78th birthday. Her family cremated her, spreading her ashes among family members and burying the rest at 2 memorial cemeteries. Fans were extremely upset by her passing, as she was such a beloved figure by the end of her life. With a career that spanned over 6 decades, Shore left an incredible mark on the entertainment industry and became one of America's most loved celebrities. Her influential career and timeless music continue to inspire and empower women, making her a trailblazer in the industry. Today, her legacy continues both through her music and through the many female talk show hosts that walked through the doors that she opened. More than that, the love story of Shore and Reynolds continues to resonate with fans and serves as a reminder of the complexities of love in the public eye. Each left an incredible mark on the entertainment industry, with Shore's contributions to music and television inspiring countless artists, and Reynolds' iconic roles influencing a generation of actors. Their romance, which is characterized by passion and resilience, remains a fascinating chapter in Hollywood's history.